Whether it's in an old, abandoned city, in the middle of a dark forest, or floating isolated in the astral sea, your party stumbles upon a crumbling, dilapidated clock tower stretching into the sky above. Somehow, despite its appearance, a low bell still rings on the hour, even though the clock faces have long stopped working. Once they step inside, they're greeted by a gnomish man who could not be more out of place in this abandoned building, yet he certainly belongs here. And he's going to challenge your party to make it all the way to the top of the tower, going level by level, facing obstacle after obstacle as they make their climb. If they complete their ascension and beat the final trial at the top, that gnome offers them a choice. They can take the reward they found, or be pitched back to the first floor and thrown backwards through time, with the only way forward being to rescale the tower all over again with a new set of challenges, as it is now a gold-accented monument, beautiful and in its prime.
Are you aware that it's currently the Dungeon Jam? Because it is! A bunch of TTRPG YouTubers have made a giant list of little adventures based on the 5-room dungeon model for you to drag and drop into your games, much like the adventure catalogs of old. Thus, I present to you with a dungeon for 7th level characters, the Tower of Time, a collaboration between myself and the Bard's College.
That's me. I'm that guy.
If you haven't already seen the Bard's College, do yourself a favor and check his stuff out. His creativity knows no bounds.
The Tower of Time, a clock tower that comes in 2 versions, Restored and Decayed. You can play only one, but they're meant to be played back to back, in either order. Which one you start with just depends on what best fits your campaign setting. In this video, we're going to be tackling the ruined, crumbling version of the tower that is long past its prime.
And over on my channel, we cover the restored version of the tower, when the place was in pristine condition. Really need to watch both to get the full effect, so definitely go there and subscribe or whatever, I don't even care.
How and why your players stumble across the tower is up to you. This is meant to be a short dungeon to slot into an existing campaign, not a whole story in of itself. We have full text descriptions and tons of fun concepts, so you don't have to add anything if you don't want to. It is good to go as is, but I encourage you to modify it as you see fit. Once your players make their way past those worn doors that are halfway off their hinges, they'll see that the first floor of this tower used to be a work of art. Used to. Now, the marble walls are stained, the hourglasses decorating the room are shattered or opaque with dust, and everything is cracked and crumbling. Shortly after they enter, they're greeted by a gnome man named Timothy Clocks. You do not have to name him Timothy Clocks. You could rename him. Hell, you could replace him entirely. There might be an NPC in your home game already that would be more of a compelling fit to place in Timothy's role.
And what is that role, I hear you asking? Well, first, don't interrupt. But second, he's the keeper of this tower. And while he looks like an ordinary old man, he's actually an immortal being who wields powerful time magic, giving him control over the tower that he works tirelessly to maintain. Beyond just being awesome, his role in the adventure is to challenge your players with climbing the tower, promising that if they can clear his dungeon, he'll give them a wonderful reward. So if you do decide to replace him with somebody else, are you out of your goddamn mind? He's a cool gnome time wizard. What more could you want?
What Tyler means to say is that if you do replace Timothy, make sure you find some other way to give your players a push to actually climb the tower.
On the next floor, the players face their first challenge, a multi-step puzzle room. I'm not gonna go into detail here, because I'm gonna force Tyler to do it.
Thanks, Thomas. Feel very welcome here on the channel. The chamber has a big domed ceiling, covered in a mosaic of stars and planets. It was probably very beautiful at one point, but is crumbling and decayed. A tree is growing up through the floor, and while the sun is cracked and broken, the crescent moon has completely fallen off. There's a giant sundial in the middle of the floor, and a chair that sits between 2 levers, or really just one, since the other is broken. This puzzle is all about speeding up time. First, they'll need to fix the sun, lighting it up once more. You can let them get creative here. Maybe they have the mending spell, could shoot a firebolt to reignite it, or hang a lantern inside. Anything to turn the light back on. Once the sun is shining again, it'll create a beam that causes anything it touches to rapidly age, including any player silly enough to step inside. If they spin the big dial on the ground, the sun will start to move across the sky, and they can use that lever I mentioned to control where it goes. By shining the beam on things like that tree to get it to grow, or the moon to change its phase from crescent to full, they'll be able to gather a few items they need to place in the door, so it'll open and let them out. Simple, but but it requires your players to work together and use a variety of skills if they want to pass.
There's plenty of details to explain everything in the dungeon's documents, and we also included a cheat sheet that lets you keep track of the various steps. If your players come up with a clever workaround that you don't read in here, let them. Being able to use out-of-the-box thinking is one of the things that makes tabletop gaming so unique, so great. So let them. Just let them.
Climbing up further, the players will find their way into a pitch black room. Get ready to hear about how many of your players have dark vision. The only light being a dim glow emanating off of some clocks that are up on the walls. In the rafters, 4 gargoyles are waiting for the perfect time to strike. The room is pretty straightforward. The players need to get through a door, and that is as simple as picking up some keys off the ground. The interesting part comes from the living statues that are going to kick their ass the second they try. But these aren't typical gargoyles. They come with a cool little toy.
Introducing Time Drop. Yeah, that was truly the best name Thomas could come up with. But don't worry, it plays better than it sounds. The gargoyle strategy is to grab your players with their claw attack, attempting to grapple them with a bonus action whenever they hit. Once in their clutches, the gargoyles will fly up into the air, and on their next turn, let your unfortunate player fall back to the ground. But this is no ordinary drop, this is a time drop, so they'll use their chronomancy to accelerate that fall. And after your players have been reacquainted with the floor, they'll reverse time and pull them back up into their clutches, ready to do it again next turn, like a devastating, deadly yo-yo.
To create some extra depth, each one of these gargoyles is connected to a clock on the wall, and if a player destroys a gargoyle's clock, it loses access to time magic and it can no longer use the ability Time Drop. Make sure that you add in some descriptions about one of the clock's hands spinning really rapidly when a gargoyle uses Time Drop to cue the players into this existing mechanic. This is also an opportunity to play around with a pitch black room. If your players somehow light up the room with light cantrip or a torch or something, you can give them a chance to spot the gargoyles. Players with dark vision who are actively investigating the room might also have a chance to spot them too, but make sure you give them disadvantage on their perception checks as the room still counts as dimly lit. Once all of the gargoyles are out of the way, the party can collect the keys and make it to the next level.
As they ascend these final flights of the tower, they end up outside the structure, with the staircase spiraling around the building's walls and ending 40 feet below the door that they need to get into. It used to go all the way to the top, of course, but time has crumbled it away into nothingness, and the players have to find their own way to reach the top. This presents the party with a brief obstacle to get creative with. A time for you to step back and let the players lead the moment. Let their ideas drive the story forward. Get ready to pull out that yes and mindset and build on what they come up with. If the players want to throw a rope up top so that they can climb up, describe how there's a piece of rebar jutting out from the ruined building. And if they succeed a dex or strength check, they can hook it and climb. If one of the players wants to go down to floor 2, find that tree they found, hack it down and make a ladder out of wood, why not? Ask for a check using their woodcarver's tools.
We've added some guides and examples to help make this as simple as possible. And on the flip side, we've also put in a section that has some additional obstacles you can throw in to make it even more of a challenge. Things like strong winds and falling rubble. Just in case your party wants to have the Aarakocra fly everyone up to the door and avoid it altogether. Nice try, players, but you're going to get a sense of accomplishment and you're going to like it.
Once the climb is finished, your party has made it to the final room. Inside the top of the clock tower, behind those massive clock faces where the old and rusted machinery is. The room is exactly what you would expect it to be of something so decrepit, if it wasn't for all the sand covering everything. In one large pile, there are broken pieces of an old construct stuck inside, and it starts to rise and take form. Not the construct, the sand. And thus begins the final fight against the sands of time. Fighting a huge sand elemental with access to time magic from the broken technology of a long-dead arcane construct is not pretty. The Sands of Time has a lot of debuffs in its kit, and when you mix that with resistance to non-magical attacks, it can be a tough fight to get the upper hand in. It only makes one melee attack on its own turn, but can dish out multiple swings with legendary actions. Couple that with its slam potentially blinding targets to make their lives more difficult, and you have some players whose lives are more difficult. In addition, each turn comes with one activation of the broken chronomantic technology that is flowing through its body, causing a random time-based effect to hit a player. These things range from a long-lasting debuff to a one-round debuff and even direct damage. Add in the ability to gong a bell that'll knock your players out of concentration, and you have a pesky little shit to deal with. But it ain't all doom and gloom. If the players bring anything to the fight that can deal lightning damage, they have the ability to start turning the Sands of Time into glass, using its own body against it.
Once the Sands of Time dies, the bell of the tower falls, and as it's falling, it shrinks until it is nothing but a tiny little trinket. And the doors of the elevator open up once more to reveal Timothy Clocks yet again. He offers your players a choice. They can either take Clock's Bell, this magic item, as a reward right now, or they can go double or nothing. Feel free to replace Clock's Bell with any magic item you want, or information, or any other resource that's important to your campaign. If there's something that you think would drive your players to tackle this dungeon, that is a great thing to swap Clock's Bell out with.
Of course, this is the same dude who told you it's okay to replace the Timothy Clocks, so don't listen to him. If you think something else will motivate your players more, that's totally cool. Just give them that and Clock's Bell. It helps them mess up enemy mages' concentration, which is, in scientific terms, very cool. But regardless of what you put up here, don't forget about that second option. If your players decide that they want to try for an even better reward, they can board the lift, Timothy will spin those clocks, and they'll plummet back down to the entrance. And back in time, to when the tower was in its heyday. They'll have to rescale the dungeon, getting to see its challenges and enemies in an all-new light. And you can find that covered in my video. It's the first link in the description. Don't worry, Thomas is in it too, and he had some awesome ideas for part 2. I hope you'll check it out.
There's also documents for running the dungeon down below, as well as a link to the Dungeon Jam playlist, where you can find all sorts of dungeons for your games. Give it a look, and maybe save it for later. That way, one day, if you need some quick material for a session, it's right there for you. If you want to support the channel so I can make better quality content more frequently, consider joining my Patreon. You too could be a Suave Tommy, just like Nolan Whitmer. There's also a poll going on over there that lets you guys tell me the sorts of things you want me to offer through Patreon. I'd really appreciate hearing your feedback on that. Thank you.